He held the WBC, WBO, and Ring Magazine lineal middleweight titles from 2007 to 2010. He was known for his tremendous punch output and fan-friendly style. Please welcome to Title Unboxed, Kelly the Ghost Pavlik.
Welcome to Title Unboxed. With more than 40 years of experience in the fight game, our host, Doug Ward, will be covering every corner of the ring as we get comfortable between the ropes. We'll talk with both the lesser knowns and the legends, discuss boxing's rich history and current state of the game. We'll also look at today's latest innovations, equipment breakdowns, and insights you won't uncover anywhere else. Join us now as we take a look inside Title Unboxed.
Kelly, welcome to Title Unboxed.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you for being here. So I know also recently you opened up a gym. What is it, in the suburbs of Youngstown?
Yes, so it's right outside of Youngstown. It's the boxing is going great. A lot of kids, a lot of green kids, which is even better because you can start with them from ground zero and build them up. So it's pretty cool to get some. I got a couple pros in there as well, but really focusing on the youth program that I was telling you about before the show with the charitable and getting these kids in and giving them something to do after school and keeping them busy. So yeah, the boxing gym's going very well and it's taken off. And what else would I have done after retiring, right?
Right. Well, like you say, sometimes it's better when they're green because it's easier to teach them the basics and fundamentals from the start than to correct bad habits. That sometimes just is
because that's
task.
the hardest thing is getting a kid that's been 2 or 3 years in, and they come like I have that too. They come to me from not knocking other trainers, but just calling a bluebird blue.
Sure.
They come to me and then I'm like trying to break this habit. Everything is a habit, and you're trying to break it and get them on the right habit. And just you got to have the patience at that point. You got a bunch of other kids around, and you're trying to show them, and those are some of the parts that you don't look forward to. But again, it's all on its own. It's still pretty fun to be able to just to pass the knowledge and work on certain things. And you're kind of a trainer and a coach, because the new kids, you got to train them.
Yep.
Some of the kids that are experienced, you want to coach them and teach them. So it's fun.
Well, and you started boxing when you were what, 9 years old?
Yeah, right around. I had my first fight though at 12. But I was in and out because I was playing different sports. But yeah, I would say 11 years old when I kind of started getting pretty serious.
Yeah, and you walked into the gym, and that's where you first met Jack Lowe, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I met. Well, funny story. So the first time I ever walked into Southside Boxing Club, Jack wasn't there. Now, mind you, I'm this 10-year-old, 9 or 10-year-old kid, and didn't pay attention to boxing. I knew of it. My older brothers boxed a little bit. I put gloves on at my friend's house and just beat the crap out of each other. But aside from Mike Tyson, I didn't know much about boxing. And I walked into the gym and there was a guy there jump roping. He was the only person in the gym. And he goes, "Yo, you here to box?" And I was like, "Yeah, I want to sign up." And he goes, "Well, Jack's not here right now and blah, 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 blah." And he's like, "Come back tomorrow." And shook my hand. Super nice. We leave. I get in the car with my mom. We're driving down. She goes, "You know who that was, don't you?" And I was like, "No, I don't know who that was." She goes, "That was the IBF lightweight champ of the world, Harry Arroyo."
Oh, wow.
I was like, "Oh, wow." I go, "That's pretty cool." And then, so it was kind of just weird that I met a former champ from Youngstown. You know what I mean? And Harry's a great guy. Became close with him, ever since that day. And that's who I met when I first walked into the gym.
That's crazy. And there have been a lot of champions coming out of Youngstown. You had mentioned Harry Arroyo, of course, Ray Boom Boom Mancini, Doug DeWitt was a I think he held the WBO middleweight. Jeff Lampkin was out of there. What is it about Youngstown that breeds those world champions like that? Because that's pretty incredible in a small town like that.
Yeah, I don't know. Greg Richardson, who had the WBC,
Yep.
I think it was flyweight or bantamweight.
Bantamweight.
I don't know. It's just a small area too. You're talking at that time there was a lot of people, and they all became kind of champions what a era right there, you know, in
Man.
Youngstown, because I believe Harry Arroyo and Mancini for a short period, because Mancini was a lightweight champion, and so was Harry Arroyo.
Yep.
And I think while Mancini was still champion, towards the end, Harry won the IBF.
Yep.
So they and I know that Harry wanted that fight with Mancini badly, and to this day, there's still bad blood between them two
Really?
because of that. Yeah, they, you know, and I can understand Harry's standpoint. I can understand Ray's, you
Yeah.
know, for not taking a fight. But you know, yeah, just to have two lightweight champions, and then I think that was what 82 or 80, 83, between 81, 82,
Right. Yeah.
83.
Yep. Exactly.
Jeff Lampkin wasn't long after that, and Greg Richardson, I believe, had his WBC title right around that same time.
Yeah.
And then they had that 25-year little break of not having a champion, and then
Yeah.
I came along.
But what a great time for Youngstown.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
huge. But boxing was really big at that time as well.
It
You
was.
know,
Early 80s was huge. That was kind of like the golden age of boxing.
yeah, it was. I mean, the 70s, 80s,
Yeah.
you know, at the late 70s, I would say, because I was like Roberto Duran and Leonard and them guys came in, I think, in the late 70s.
Yeah.
So,
That was a nice
yeah, a
little,
lot of talent.
yeah, huge run there. So I remember reading a story that I think Jack Lowe had talked about in an interview, and it was your first. He said you kept bugging him to fight, bugging him to fight, bugging him to fight. Finally, he threw you in on a last minute show, I guess, and put you in with a guy that had 24 fights.
Oh, yeah, maybe more.
Wow! And you beat him.
Yeah.
What do you remember about that first
Oh,
experience? The
yeah.
nerves, the excitement, the
Oh, I remember it. It's crazy. You know, I think the kid's name was Mark Battistella,
uh
Italian kid from Steubenville, Ohio. And yeah, he was an Ohio State Fair champion. And
wow.
I'm sure, are you familiar with the old Ohio State Fair, the tournaments they would have?
Yeah, who ran that?
They were pretty big.
I remember the guy that ran it. I just can't think of his name off the top of my head. Do you remember?
Yeah, those are for a non-ranking tournament. That was a pretty big. You got a lot of talent that used to go to that tournament, and I guess you know the kid that I fought my first fight won the junior Olympic division, and that
Wow.
you know he was pretty experienced. Yeah, and I went to that fight, and at that time I was probably 90, 85 pounds, skinny, skinny. I looked like a rat. You know, I was all feet. And I got in that ring, and I don't know what it was. I couldn't miss. You
Yeah,
know, I was in there just boxing, and I tried doing the ollie shuffle,
really.
and my big old feet got caught up, and I tripped. But yeah, that was the only bad thing I remember from that fight. But yeah, it was my first amateur fight. I went in there and I handled him pretty good.
Yeah. Well, and you went on to win several national titles from there. In 1998, you won the National PAL Championship. You won the Golden Gloves. Would you
Mhm.
ever thought at that time that that was going to be, where you ended up as an amateur?
No, that you know, and that's a good point you bring up. I mean, coming up, I always knew that I was good, right? You know, like you know, you're winning fights, and then you know, USA Boxing magazine was real big when I was coming up. You know, we
Oh yeah,
didn't have access to the internet like now. You know,
right.
you definitely didn't have it when I was you know 15, 16, 17.
Yeah.
And so you relied on the USA Boxing magazines, and you would kind of see like the
Yep.
rankings and read on everything. And I remember being in like study hall and getting hollered at by the teacher because I would put that magazine inside the textbook and I would read that, right? And you would see the rankings. You know, I would
Yeah.
see guys number 1, 2, 3, and it was kind of a dream. You're like, I want to get there, and then a lot of times, you know, I went into a tournament and got beat in the first round by a kid, Jose Celia, real good fighter at
Yep.
the time,
Yep.
and he had a lot of fights though. And I had Jack and my parents kept telling me like, you know, you don't have a lot of fights though. You're fighting guys. I think I had 20 fights,
Yep.
21 fights when I was fighting guys like that. And then I would say right around 16, I just hit the corner, and I was in there, and I noticed it in sparring. You know, guys that I would kind of go back and forth with, I was just beating up pretty easy now.
Yep.
And then I went over into fights, and I went into the Junior Golden Glove Nationals, and just wiped right through it.
Yep.
Fought all 5 nights and beat everybody. And then I went into the Junior Pal tournament and fought guys that were really good. And I actually ended up fighting Michael Dargan
Yep.
out of Philadelphia. He was a very sharp fighter. He was trained by Nazim Richardson and
Oh yeah. Wow.
cousins with the Tigers and Rock
Yep.
Allen.
Yep.
And
Remember them well.
I beat him in a championship,
Yep.
and beating a guy like that could fight. That it's it wasn't just my power like in the pros that I was known for. I outboxed
Yep.
him, and I fought in the U.S. championships. Fought Darnell Wilson, who was going for the record. I think his
I
fifth straight
remember him.
U.S. national champ. Yeah, and I ended up beating him. I beat him like 26-12, and then I went through there, and I lost this Saku Powell,
Yep.
and it was a good fight. But Saku Powell was a 25-year-old
Yep.
man, and I was 17. Still with at that point 70 amateur fights. I wasn't even close to the 100 fights yet, and it didn't bother me. I still ended up qualifying for the Olympic trials. One of the younger kids, I think me, Stephen Luevino, and Nonito Donaire were like the youngest kids in the Olympic trials. And I lost to Jermaine Taylor in the trials, but it didn't deter me, or it didn't throw me off, because I took into consideration my experience compared to theirs and my age. And there was just a big difference. And I think about it to this day. If I would have stuck around another 4 years, what could have came about? But we turned pro.
Well, and you kind of bring it up, but I remember you from the amateurs. You were really known for just a tremendous work rate and punch output. You kind of just were very aggressive and pressured guys, and a lot of them just couldn't handle that kind of pressure, that kind of constant action. Is that something that came natural, or something you deliberately worked on?
I always threw a lot, even in the pros, threw a lot of hard punches. But I also moved a lot of in and out, and side to side movement in the amateurs too. It was almost kind of like Anthony Hanshaw. We both very similar style. I would say Hanshaw utilized the body a little better than I did, but in and out, side to side too, and a lot of punches. Almost as much as the guy that beat me in my first year in the open division and the Golden Gloves. I fought a guy by the name of, I'm sure you remember, James Webb.
Yeah.
And the Army team, the dude just threw like 9,000 punches around. And I always stayed active. It was something when I fought, if somebody hit me with a punch, instead of being calm, cool, collective, I felt like I had to retaliate with 10. So I think that's where it kind of got me in the habit of doing
You
that.
bring up some names I have forgotten. You actually, at one of the tournaments, I can't remember, I think it was I don't remember, it was Gene Lewis or one of the PAL tournaments out in California. I had a fighter named Francisco Diaz. I think you stopped him on a point spread.
Yeah, he was the guy who I fought to go to the Olympic trials. So at the U.S. championships that year, right? If you lost, you still had a chance, right? And I forget, I think because whoever won that tournament already qualified through the Olympic trials in another tournament. So they knocked it down to the person in place of that, right? Which was me. And I had to fight Francisco for that spot at the last day of the tournament. And the winner of that got that other spot to go to the Olympic trials. And that's when I beat him. So that was at the U.S. championships.
Okay, yeah, I remember now. Yeah. Well, you bring up some guys like Francisco and Anthony Hanshaw, some of these guys that were very talented in the amateurs. What do you think separated you, able to translate a good amateur successful career into being a successful pro?
I don't know. It could be. We went over this, and I talked to friends that are involved in boxing, and some people don't want to hear it, but I look at amateur and pro boxing as two totally different.
They really are.
Leagues or games. I don't even consider it the same sport in a weird way, right? The only thing from amateur boxing I would say that could help is giving you the feel of competing one-on-one in a competitive or if you're fortunate enough to make it to the international dual meets, to kind of grab the style of maybe the Eastern European or one of those type countries where their styles, but
Yeah.
that's about it, right? Um, Pros, it's just everything kind of slows down. There's momentum shifts. It's just a different. The headgear comes off, the feel of the punches, hitting and getting hit. It's just the lights shine there. I don't know how to
Yeah.
explain it, but yeah, it's a big difference. And I truly still believe this. A lot of people fall into that amateur boxing
Hmm.
system
Yeah.
and the fight. And I think after so many fights and being in it so long, some have a hard time of getting out
Yeah.
of that mode, right? That amateur boxing point system, and or some might just
Yeah.
be burnout from the sport in general. Some of them guys had 250 to
It's a
300
lot.
fights. That's a
Yeah.
lot. You know what I mean? And it's just not only is that a lot of fights, but that's just a lot of time
Yeah.
in the gym and sparring and and,
A lot of
and getting
punches.
hit. But so a lot comes into play in that kind of separates. And I just think that my style was made a little more for the pros, and I adapted better. I was always a student of the game. And everything I did, strength conditioning. Why I love doing strength conditioning now. Every coach I had and the research that I would do, I've always paid attention. If they had me do something, well, why? What does it do? And even to the point of by the end of my career, I kind of knew already what I wanted to do and learned a lot that way. And the same with boxing. I'd always pick up things. It could have been even when I was world champion, I had a 9-year-old kid in the gym. And if I watched him spar and he hit somebody with something, I go, ooh, I wonder if I
Yeah.
use that, if
Yeah.
it'll work, right? It's just always learning. You got to be
Yeah.
an open book, right? And I think that helped into my pro career as well. Obviously the power was a big part, and I was blessed with a great chin, and I
Yeah.
hit hard. But I also just studied a lot and did a lot of things that a lot of
Yeah.
fighters didn't.
Well, and in the pros, you did become known more for your punching power. You kept that work ethic, that aggressive forward motion, that kind of pressure fighting, but you added punching power to your arsenal. Is that something you
Yeah.
specifically worked on? Do you remember what you did to kind of bring that about?
No, I do. With the advancements in sports science and training equipment, I do believe you could add power, but I still also believe the old saying, like, if you don't have it
Yeah.
in the cradle, you're
Yeah.
never going to have
Born
it.
puncher.
I do think a lot of it comes from the basic beginning, the basic fundamentals of how to shift the weight, how to get the
Yeah.
torque in the hips and pivot and throw the punches and get the snap. Believe it or not, in boxing, a lot of fighters, a lot of trainers don't teach those basics because they
Yeah.
don't know it either. Um, but I think that could help on punching power, getting the leverage and torque into the punch, and that's pretty much it. I mean, it's kind of like the
Yeah.
baseball, right? If everybody could lift weights a little bit and hit home runs, you wouldn't
Yeah.
have a
Yeah.
leadoff
Yeah.
batter, right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't have a second. Everybody
Yeah.
be back cleanup. So yeah, and the same
Yeah.
thing in boxing. I think it kind of goes. But I do think if taught from the beginning, you could add a little bit of power onto their punch. With the right fundamentals. But anything outside of that, lifting weights or any form of training. I mean, maybe the other one would be I'm real big with fast twitch.
Hmm.
Type 2 muscle training. You might be able to add some snap onto the punch, but a lot of but that too in
Yeah.
boxing is timing.
Yeah.
Also, hitting people at the right time and just having that.
Well,
So
having all those tools,
a
let's
lot of
fast
that.
forward. Having all those tools took you to your first world title against Fulgencia Zuniga, right? For the was that the NABF?
Yes.
Is that right? NABF.
NABF. Yeah.
So let's start talking
Zuniga.
about that fight. What do you remember about winning your first title? Is it like, okay, are you from a business mindset? You're like, okay, you win it, you go, that's step one. I got to move on to the next. Or do you enjoy the moment? Are you able to emotionally, enjoy all the work you put in to get you there?
Yeah, you do. And the big ones you really don't realize until you're a couple of years
Yeah.
removed from the sport. Then you really realize how big somebody accomplished. But going to the Zuniga or Zuniga, um, that fight was real big because he was 17-1 with 16 knockouts. Could hit too. And I seen him, maybe it was a year before I
Yeah.
had that fight with him. I was at Top Rank's gym training, and he was signed with Top Rank too, probably because of his punching power. And I would watch him hit the bag, and it didn't even look like he was throwing a punch hard, and I just kept hearing this. Top Rank's gym was like
Yeah.
10,000 square feet, and I could hear this little hook that he was throwing hitting the bag. It would echo
Yeah.
through the entire gym. And I'm going, damn. I go, that boy can hit, and I would just watch him, and he was another one. Talk about throwing a lot of punches. I think he averaged
Yeah.
100 punches around at middleweight. And I was like, I don't ever want to fight that dude, joking with Jack and a couple people there at Top Rank's gym. And then the next thing you know, I got the call from the late, great Cameron Duncan telling me that, hey, you're fighting Zuniga for the NABF title. And I was like,
Spoken into reality.
yeah. And
Yeah.
it was a tough, bloody fight. I mean, that's a hidden gem that people don't realize. And if they found that fight, they would be very interested in that. If people catch that on YouTube, what a fight that was. He didn't stop, and just the style, and I had to watch a lot of his fights because there was mentions of me fighting Zartucci before I even fought Zuniga. So.
Yeah. Well, you had a lot of those that were just nonstop back and forth. He actually had, you talk about his power. He had you down with a left hook was it the first round?
Yes. Yep.
But and I talked one of my favorite fighters is Felix Trinidad. You had gone down several times in your career. The knock on him was he went down a lot in his career, but he always got up. And the same in your case, and got up more dangerous. What do you think of that? Is that something? Did you need that wake up call? Was it just the way it materialized, or
no? That knockdown with Zuniga was a crazy one. I guess that's the one that people say a flash knockdown. He hit me, and there was nothing you could do. I didn't trip. It was just giggle and laugh. Like, in other words, what the hell was that? Like, you're not out of it. You're not hurt. It's just you went, and but it's I got back up and was like more upset, you know what I mean? Like, damn, that's a 10-8 round, I got to dig a little deeper.
Does it help? But does it help focus you? Maybe does it help you focus more?
Absolutely, because you're aware that you can get knocked out. Absolutely, to a certain extent, yes, you're aware of it. And you're actually a little nervous at that point too, because I know it seems weird, like you're nervous, but you go harder. But it is, you're aware, like you're reminded everything that you're nervous about before the fight is coming to pass, and so you got to make sure you do the right things and prepare. I think it does warm you up a little bit too. I think the brain kind of, I know it sounds messed up, but I think it gets used to absorbing the punches at that point. For me, it was just always like I trained my butt off. Training camps for me were 6-7 hours a day, sometimes 8. And in a Zuniga and the Jermaine Taylor, it was you work too hard. I got dropped in the first round and in the second round with Taylor. You work too hard to kind of go out this early. If you're going to lose, let's see where you're at. Let's see what you could do. At least give me 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 rounds.
Yeah, but your conditioning plays a big part of your ability to recuperate from a shot.
Oh, absolutely, especially the legs. Be able to recover, because it does take a lot out. And I don't know the science behind it. I'm not a neurologist, so I don't know how much of extra work that your legs are going through when you equilibrium's off, or your brain's rattled throughout your skull. You know what I mean? But I'm sure it's extra energy that you're using with the legs to keep the stability. And, so being in shape is a huge part, and also having strong legs. Like, if you get hurt for that split second, a lot of times I go back to like the Mayweather versus Zab Judah and the Mayweather versus Shane Mosley. Mayweather trained like an animal. Nobody can ever take that away from him. And look how he almost got knocked down, how he caught himself last second, was able to have the strength and the legs to
Yep.
keep himself up.
Well, another one of those back and forth wars you bring it up was Edison Miranda, which was your WBC title elimination fight.
Yes.
Another just like, you know, just back and forth, just trading blows. What do you remember about that fight?
That guy could hit. That guy could hit like no one else I've ever faced. They said,
Who hit hardest in your
oh,
entire
Edison
career? Who'd you
Miranda. Edison,
really?
yeah.
Yeah.
And listen, people soon to forget because of how I beat him and then what happened afterwards. But when that fight was made, and people, if they really go back and think about it, like Miranda was the boogeyman of boxing at that point.
Yeah, he
Like,
was knocking everybody out.
yeah, and he was just, everything was how hard Edison Miranda hits. Even my own friends had me psyched out for that fight because like they were watching, and they would always say like, "Oh, I hope you don't fight that Miranda, man. That dude's a monster." And then I fought
Yeah.
him, and everybody's like, "I don't know, man. That dude hits hard," and you're like, you're getting that in your head, and you go in, how hard, you know what I mean. Even for somebody that's been there and been a pro boxer and at the getting a contender at that point, you get but you don't know until you get in there and they hit you with that first punch. And I think his
Hmm.
was a jab, and it hit me in the shoulder, and it was just like, damn, like maybe a football player, they go up against like another lineman, and they know he's strong, but until that lineman puts his paws on him, they don't realize how
Yeah.
strong, right? And he hit me with that, and then he hit me with another punch, and even the ones that didn't look like he was throwing hard, when they hit you, you just carried that for like 3 or 4 rounds. Um,
Hmm.
the mindset in that fight though was, I know I'm in great shape. I know I'm strong. And I think that he needs to worry about my power. Can he withstand
Yep.
my barrage of punches and my power? And that was the whole goal in that fight. That was the game plan. Go in, back him up, and see what happens.
But highly competitive through the entire fight. I mean, you had to have been relieved when Steve Smoger stepped in the seventh round and waved it off.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Because, I mean, part of me knew that he was done. You know what I mean? He was done after that first
Yeah.
knockdown. But again, and I was always well aware of this, Edison Miranda had enough
Yeah.
power, whether he was done or not. If he landed a punch, it could be
Yeah.
a good night. You know what I mean? So of course
Yeah.
you want to see the referee wave it off.
Yeah. Well, interesting because I think he's a prime example of fighters that get that cloak of invincibility taken away from them. I don't think he was ever the same after you fought him.
Yeah, I don't either. That was a pretty big beating. I mean, he did. He took a lot, and it could have been. I still thought he did fairly well and has some potential
Yeah.
after, but yeah, he never kind of regained that mojo or whatever you want to call it. That he didn't
Yeah.
regain that big punch,
He
knock
never had
you
that.
out, and who
Yeah.
knows? Maybe at that point, maybe he just didn't feel like having to go back to climbing the ladder again. Maybe he was so
Yeah.
close. Maybe
Yeah.
a lot of that fight took it out of him.
Yeah. Well, and that set up the big fight. We've talked about Jermaine Taylor. I mean, he was the man to beat at that time. I think I remember. I could, maybe I'm not recalling this correctly. I kind of remember you coming in as the underdog. I mean, I think Emmanuel Stewart even said. I think he used the word overrated.
Yeah, yeah, he did a
So,
couple times.
and how do you adjust to that? Do you feel like you everything led up to that being prepared to step onto the big stage and have the kind of performance that you did?
I think it was huge. Again, but it goes back to kind of being used to that, right? If you think about it, before I fought Miranda, I remember at the press conference when I came up to talk, I go, "Am I even fighting tomorrow?" Because everything was Jermaine versus Edison, with the
Yeah,
torch
yeah,
rater. So,
yeah,
and then obviously I did what I did to Miranda, but that still wasn't enough. I wasn't given a chance in hell. I wasn't given a chance in hell the second fight with Taylor. Everybody kept saying, if
yeah,
Kelly don't knock him out, he's not going to win, right? And I don't
yeah,
understand
yeah,
that because the first fight with Taylor, I felt that I won the majority of the rounds. Actually, I got
yeah.
dropped in that second round because I won the first round so easy. And the beginning of that second round was kind of moving the same way, and then I got dumb and got
Hmm.
caught. But Yeah, going into that fight, it was a lot of pressure. I felt like I had to fight for a lot more than just fighting Taylor, you know,
Yeah,
for the respect and notoriety.
right. And he had you hurt on several occasions throughout that fight. What's going through your mind? I mean, he had you stepping in potholes leading up to you kind of turn the dial on him. But what's going through your mind when you're just trying to survive? If you can just get through and clear your head.
Yeah, so the first round was again going back on that easy. To me, I was kind of winning it, and just I was telling myself like, yeah, it's the first round. Like yeah, he's filling you out. But I was just really confident. The second round, the beginning of that second round, up until I got caught, was kind of the same way though. I was hitting him with the jabs, the right hands,
Yep.
and then he hit me with that one and it hurt me. The punch. I did
Yeah.
the dumb thing of sticking my tongue out, and then he hit me again right behind the ear, equilibrium shot, and I went down. And it was one of those knockdowns, kind of like Zuniga. Legs were gone, but
Yep.
I mentally I was there. I was very well aware. I could actually pick out people in the stands screaming, "Get up!" And I
Yeah.
remember Smoger saying, "As long as you can get up and show me that you're able to hold on and keep punching back, I'm not going to stop the fight." So then I told myself, "Dude, you can't go out like this." Second round, right? So I got up and it was I knew if I could get out of that second round, I knew that fight was mine, you know, and that was kind of it. When I got back to that corner, that's why I was smiling. Like I knew I won the fight. I know it sounds weird,
Yeah.
but that smile wasn't
Yeah.
because I was still hurt. That laugh and everything that I had going back was, I'm gonna win this fight now. It's my turn. He's done. So
I remember that. I remember you smiling and saying to Jack, I think you said, "Yeah, I'm all right," and you smiled
yeah.
at him in between rounds. So at that point, it's like, okay, you knew we knew you had it together.
Oh, absolutely. And just knowing, you know what I mean, that um it was my fight at that point. Especially the way the
Yeah.
third round when I came out and I threw, I think, almost over 100 punches in that third round and just beat the crap out of him. And
Yeah.
I think at that point that the fight was already gone from Jermaine. You know,
Yeah. Well, and there's something too, isn't there, that once you've got taken a guy's best shot, you know what to expect, and so you're able to adapt and absorb those kind of shots easier.
absolutely. Yep. And you're warmed up to it. I do believe that's a big thing. I think the most dangerous parts in a fight for fighters is those first couple of rounds. You know.
Yeah. I read recently that Dana White come out and said he lost. He said he lost $1 million betting on Jermaine Taylor. He said, I got it written down here. He said he fought that white kid from Ohio, and I thought Jermaine was going to kill him, but Jermaine Taylor got destroyed. I was in Cabo, Mexico, relaxing, having fun. That ruined my fun. It ruined my whole trip.
Yeah.
That's a funny little antidote to the fight.
Yeah, well,
You,
next time
you,
he knows, he learned, and he should,
there you go.
instead of being mad at me, he should thank me for that. That he can't just go off certain
Right?
things. You got to do his research a little more.
Yeah, yeah.
I
You
when I
cost
when I
Dana
seen
White a
that,
million
I
bucks.
laughed. I thought that was pretty funny too.
Yeah, $1 million is nothing to him now, but
No,
at the
it
time,
probably wasn't
probably a
even
different
back then. I
story.
mean, I'm sure he was. Um, UFC was kind of taking off pretty
Crazy.
good at that time. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't even know if he had UFC at that time.
I think he probably was in the beginning throes of
Okay,
it.
yeah,
Yeah,
maybe a
yeah,
million is a
yeah,
million. I don't know. I'm different though. $1 million to me. I
yeah.
lose $100. I'm mad.
I know. That's why I can't gamble in Vegas or anything. It feels
Yeah,
bad.
yeah. I'm very
10 bucks
conservative.
just throw it away. We had several great fights after again their follow up to Jermaine Taylor. He activated the rematch clause, and you won that fight handily. I felt you had the fight against Lockett, and then you moved up to fight Bernard
Yeah.
Hopkins. What was the motivation behind that? Was it just you couldn't make the middleweight
No, it was
weight limit
just
anymore? Do you regret that? Do you feel good about it?
no. It was just it wasn't that. One of the big things was like the Paul. We had a fight schedule with Paul Williams that kind of fell out, fell through a little bit between promoters, and after the Lockett fight, I kind of took a lot of crap for the Lockett fight, so I was kind of like,
Yeah.
well, then, I'll fight Hopkins. So, and it was just one of them fights that I don't talk much about it because every time as a fighter, if we say something, we're making excuses.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I've
Yep.
learned from the two times shortly after the fight that I said what happened. I learned that it ain't going to make it. It's just going to cause more, backlash for it. So I didn't,
Yeah.
but I could honestly say that the thing with the Hopkins fight, I didn't really take anything from it. And I hear a lot of people say like Hopkins ruined his career, and he didn't. It was just a
Yeah.
fight that that was not a 100 or 90% Kelly Pavlik for that fight. He did certain
Right.
things. I seen and knew he was going to do them and just couldn't pull the trigger. Nothing special that he did. Obviously, though, Bernard Hopkins a great fighter. You know what I mean? He was big,
Yeah.
strong. You don't accomplish what Bernard Hopkins accomplished by not being great. Just wasn't my
Right.
night. So, I guess more so to say, was it a learning lesson? No. How could it be, a learning lesson
Yeah.
I if I was able and I was just getting beat up like that, totally different, but I didn't really take too much from it. I kind of even went to Martinez. And I know it sounds like, oh, the two losses you had, you know. But in all reality, what I tell people is um I lost to two Hall of Famers. You know
Right.
what I mean? What
Right.
am I
Mm-hmm.
mad about it? Yeah, I do. It's that competitive part. Do I think my career was ruined because of it? Absolutely not. You know what I mean? They were great fighters, but Hopkins was just he was everything that we knew, you know,
Yeah.
slick, sneaky,
Mm-hmm.
a veteran, and just knew how to kind of do certain things at certain times. Again, knowing that they were going to happen, but just a very
Yeah.
lethargic me. And like I always say, if you go back and you watch Taylor Hopkins' controversial fights, but they were good fights, right? And
Right.
I know you can't use that as a measuring stick. Fights fights make styles, and
Mm-hmm.
different
Styles make fights.
styles,
Yeah.
make fights, and
Mm-hmm.
it's all
Yep.
different, right? But for it to be as one sided, I think people could tell, if something was off a little
Yeah.
bit, I guess to say.
Right.
If he
Definitely.
would have went there and beat me, even a unanimous decision, but like a legit 116, 112, or something like that, and then that's
Yeah.
different. It's like, nah, shit, he got me right. But
Yeah.
I think that's just the way the lopsidedness people should be able to tell. But again, it takes nothing away from what Hopkins did. Hopkins, was
Right.
a fan, one of the greatest of all time. I mean, in
Yeah.
my opinion, I think Hopkins is probably one or number two greatest middleweight of all time. Hands
Yeah.
down.
Well, and you went up, but you went on after that and won several fights. What made you finally decide that I probably need to just give this up and move on? What made you retire? What really was the catalyst?
So again, there was a lot of speculations and everything going on about that, but I was when I started boxing, I told my wife, she was happy too when I retired, but it was a sport that I always said I was not going to be in too long. If I won the world title, like
Yeah.
when I won the world title, I was counting down to retirement as where other fighters are counting the next big money fight. Um,
Yep.
I was always very well grounded. I don't the whole flash and this and that and being out in the limelight was never really a big part for me. I didn't still ain't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So but also my health. I always said like I want to be able to talk and walk and be able to do what I do now. I'm able to own businesses and put on and run programs and just be active and have fun, so the retiring part it was always going to be fairly early in my life. You know what I mean? I was not going to be a boxer that fought into the 40s. Um,
Yeah.
and I had the falling out with Jack, a lot behind that. And
Are you guys friendly now?
Yeah,
You
well,
talk.
he's mad at me because I opened a boxing gym. So, but yeah, and supposedly I'm doing it to hurt him. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, I love Jack. Jack's
Yeah.
a great guy. And, we've shared a lot together. But it was at that point in my career when that all happened, I was already kind of going on I was losing that big punch, the punch for the sport, the love, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in boxing, if you don't have that 100% in the heart, it's a dangerous hobby to have. Or a sport to be
Absolutely.
involved in. So then that's when Top Rank came and said that I had to go over to Robert Garcia. Now, mind you, throughout my entire career, Top Rank wanted me gone. They flew me out
Yeah.
when I turned pro, without Jack trying to get me away from Jack. In 2005, they sent me to the Castillo Corrales fight without, Jack trying to get me, away. They sent me to Pat
Yeah.
Barry to train. So
Huh.
it wasn't so much that either. I was very loyal but at that point in 2010, I was just losing it. Just all the shit
Hmm.
involved, excuse my
Yeah.
language, but just everything that was involved with the sport. Um, and then I went to Garber Garcia, and at that point, it was kind of like the last year. It was an ultimatum that was given to me, like you have to go,
Yeah.
Robert Garcia.
Wow.
So I said, screw it. You know what? Part of me was like, what am I going to learn after being a world champion all these years of fighting? What am I
Yeah.
going to learn new?
Yeah.
And I was surprised. I see
Really.
why Robert Garcia has the stable and the amount of fighters, and he's just a fantastic person. First of all, love Robert,
Yeah.
love everyone out at the gym, um, but he's also just a great trainer, and nothing spectacular that he showed me, but it was
Hmm.
more of the coaching. Like when you went back to the corner, there was you learned, you learned what you were doing. You
Hmm.
had constructive info and different things to do in the ring. The combos, he didn't change the style, but added different combos and different ways and explained to you why. And it was just a different experience, and something that was great. And I think it added to going back to me being an open book and a student of the game.
Yeah.
I think it helped with my boxing knowledge, and it was a big part. But while being out there, usually at the beginning of your career, when you don't have kids, you don't have a wife, you don't make the money, that's when
Yeah.
you go away, right? You leave
Yeah.
home. For me, it was hard. I had young kids, a wife. I made the money. Um, it was hard to, I had to up and leave for almost a half a year at a time.
Yeah.
Go out
Yeah.
cross country, and then also, I get that Top Rank put me in with Aaron Jaco, my first fight, because new trainer. But
Hmm.
then the second one, Scott Sigmund, and then the third one, Will Brzezinski. You
Yep.
kind of started like, all right, this is,
Yeah.
they weren't getting the big paydays, and understandably, and I was getting ready to retire then, and then that's when the Andre Ward fight. It was
Oh
so
yeah.
close to being signed,
Yeah.
and I believe I signed off on it. And when my agent called me, when Cameron called me, I was revived. You know what I mean? I was
Wow.
rejuvenated.
Yeah.
I was so excited, and probably was going to be my last fight again, anyways. But I was like,
Yeah.
you had something to train for again.
Yeah. And
And
that would have been a good one.
yeah, yeah, it
I
was.
forgot about that, and then he injured his shoulder and
Yeah, then yep,
rewrote the story.
he hurt his shoulder, and at that point, that was like the icing on the cake. Like
Yep.
I was done, and I'll never forget. I talked to my wife, and she started crying. She was like, "This is the greatest day of my life." She was happy I
Yep.
retired, and I called Cameron. I was like, "I'm done," you know. And now that I go to the Hall of Fames. I go to the Atlantic City Boxing Hall of Fame. I go to these events, and to be honest with you, I wish I would. After being around them, I sometimes wish I would have retired 2 years earlier. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah. I hear you.
I don't have no regrets. I don't think people say you retired early, and I get that. I think a lot of people grab and think that my career started shortly before or in 2007. because I was under the radar for so long. But
Yeah.
I was pro, 12 years, over 12 years. And
Paying your dues. Yeah.
yeah, 42 fights. If you think about it, Mayweather turned pro what, 96, 90, yeah,
After
96,
the Olympics,
40,
97. Yeah.
yeah, 4 years before me, and
Yep.
retired 8 years after me and only had eight more
Yeah.
fights than me.
Yeah.
I think,
It's crazy. That's crazy.
yeah. So you kind of in boxing, with the fans, you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Right.
If you
Right.
retire early, it's all you have demons, or wasted talent. And if you stick around too long, it's oh, poor guy, shouldn't have stuck around that long. You can't talk or eat without drool coming out, and you
Yeah.
can't. It's just one of those type things. So there's never really a good situation, especially in a social
Yeah.
media era.
Yeah. Right. Well, it's easy to be a critic when you're sitting on the sidelines or sitting in the couch at home watching TV. It's a different
Yep.
deal. Yeah. I mean, you bring up an interesting point. You said earlier, I think sometimes amateurs have too long a careers and then pros fight on too long. I think age has a lot to do with it. The guys that are fighting into their 40s, 50s, even, that's when the damage is really done.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I go back to it. It's gym wars.
Yeah.
A
Oh,
lot of
yeah,
people,
totally. It's sparring.
yeah, people feel that you got to spar 400 rounds of training camp. Like, that's where a lot of the brutality and the damage really comes to. Like,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, getting hit in a fight or getting knocked out in the fight is brutal, and but obviously being knocked out is far worse than getting hit 200 times in the head, right?
Right.
When you
Right.
get knocked out, you just suffer severe brain damage. But boxing, that separates it from what makes it more dangerous than UFC and MMA, is that's all you do.
Yeah.
There's no 3 minutes of grappling or positioning. It's you get your brain scrambled. If you can get up within 8 seconds or even 9 seconds and show the referee that you're able to go somewhat, you may go another 28 minutes of getting punched in the head.
Right. Right.
Sometimes you get dropped two or three times in a fight.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that don't help. But sparring, what happens in the gym, you always hear the gym wars and stuff like that. And I believe a lot of these deaths, like the small bleed on the brains, I believe some of
Hmm.
these could possibly come from sparring that's
I
never
agree. I totally
detected.
agree.
Yeah, and people always try to say, like, oh, it's the weight drain, or it's this and it's that. But I truly believe that a lot of managers and trainers, they'll hide somebody could get their ass knocked out real bad in the fight, right, or a sparring session, and they'll
Yeah.
hide that because they feel like the fight will be in jeopardy, and it's their pay that's in jeopardy.
Right.
I've
Right.
seen it all too many times, and experienced it.
I'll bet.
Uh, a lot happens, and again, you think about it. I think the average is like 200 rounds a camp sparring.
Yeah. Wow.
That's
It's a
that's a
lot.
lot,
Yeah.
and some places they live by it. You're
Yeah.
not a man, or you're not a real fighter unless you spar 3 to 4 times a week. And it's
Yeah.
just, it takes a toll on the body. First of all, not only cognitive issues, but that's a lot on the body. And me being
Just
involved in strength
physically.
and conditioning, yeah, people don't realize that
Yeah.
working out it really tears down muscle,
Hmm.
right? Recovery and rest is what the body is a huge defense mechanism, right? So, like, the rest is when the body repairs to what you're doing
Yeah.
to it. And so having the right rest and giving yourself, not everything has to be 500%. It's like,
Right.
let the body recover, let it repair, let it rest, and that's when people are at their best. But sparring throughout a training camp that many times,
Yeah.
it's brutal on the body. And you're
It
not,
can definitely
that's
take.
not including an hour of training after sparring, and then they're running in the morning, or the strength conditioning that you're doing. And and some of these fighters run 3-4 miles a day, they run hills.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just a lot, it really is.
It takes its toll, but it's good to see you doing so well and made the right choice by getting out when you did.
Thank
Kelly, you've given fans their money's worth in memories with 42 all action fights. I'd encourage everybody out there, all the listeners and viewers, to go out and do what you said. Watch some of those fights on YouTube that are just classics if you go back and really watch them for what they were.
well, thank you. There were some good ones, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. So hopefully the the next world champion we'll see coming out of Youngstown is out of your gym.
Oh, I would hope so. I would love nothing more than have another one from Youngstown.
Right? They're due. They're due.
I think so. Yeah, because it's going on 17 years for me. So that don't seem like it. Scary when you think about it, but
yeah, that's a dry
we're due.
spell.
Yep. So I got a young fighter right now, amateur. She's ranked #1 in the country, different weight classes, Zion Hensley, and so maybe she'll be the next female world champion.
Awesome. We'll be ready. Before we close out here, tell everybody where they can follow you and watch what you got going on with the gym and some of your other prospects.
Yeah, they can follow me on Instagram at pavlik.kelly, Kelly Pavlik on TikTok, and Kelly Pavlik on Facebook. I'm older, so it's easier for me to get along better with Facebook. They can follow my charitable organization at Kelly Pavlik charitableorganization.org, and they can read on like what the organization is about, the vision of the program. There's a donation link on there, and that's pretty much it. It's
awesome.
Just doing the thing and staying busy.
Awesome. Follow this legendary fighter Kelly Pavlik on all of his social channels. Kelly, good talking to you. Thanks for your time. Appreciate you.
Oh, I'd love to do it again. Thanks for having me on. It was fun.
Take care.
All right. Have a good one.
Thank you for watching this episode of Title Unboxed. If you're anything like me, you can never get too much boxing. So if you'd like to watch more episodes, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on our Title Boxing YouTube page.